Well, we ended up getting the silage box all painted, and now we're on to the next project. We're going to put a stainless liner kit in this mixer wagon. If you recall, 3 years ago we ended up putting a steel liner in here, and once we put that in, a lot of the paint got burned off. Kind of see where the weld is up there. Paint got burned off of it, and we ended up painting it white, and then we put these black spots on there to kind of make it look like a Holstein cow. I don't know as if I'd ever do that again. The other mixer wagon we rebuilt 2 years ago, and I painted that one red, the color it's supposed to be. So we're going to take these mixing screws out, and then we're going to, the liner kit is setting right there. We're going to get this stainless liner kit set up inside, and we're going to start welding her in there. You ready to weld on some stainless?
Yes.
I went and picked up the wire this morning, and I had to get a bottle of gas here that we're going to use for the stainless, and it is 90% helium, 7.5% argon, and 2.5% carbon dioxide. We use a 75-25 mix. We're using a 90-10 mix on one of the other welders, and then we also use an 85-15 depending on what kind of welding we're getting into. But this mixer wagon was 4 years old when we put this one liner in. And being that we're a little past 3 years, I'm assuming that this liner is getting a little weak, and I don't want to be surprised in, say, August or September with a blowout on these walls here. That one baffle right there is getting kind of thin, so that's why we're going to go ahead and reline it now. The stainless, it's not quite twice the money, but it should last twice as long. We're hoping to get like 6 years out of it, and then that'll put this mixer wagon somewhere around 13 or 14 years old. So we better get after it here. All right, so we have the mixer wagon outside. We've got the telehandler up over the top, and we've got a chain hooked on to the center support bar that goes across the top of the screw. Now we had to remove the disc covers. We use old discs from a disc to put on here as a cover, and we have removed the 10 bolts that are down inside the auger hub assembly here. So we'll go ahead and lift these out. We'll set them out of the way, and then we can put them back in when we get this job done. Well, you seen us lift the screws out. We ended up getting them out of here. We cleaned all of the excess feed out. Now we have all of our pieces laying in here, and we're gonna start putting them in. Now, what is there for pieces? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 pieces altogether. The very front and the rear, we have to cut to allow the feed to get out the door. So this has not only a front door, but this mixer has a rear door on it too. So, and the pieces, the steel pieces, the liner pieces that we put in a couple, 3 years ago, they had this already cut, and all we had to do, they left a couple of spots where it wasn't cut all the way through, and then we cut it out, and then that's the material that we were using for kicker plates for a while. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of get it setting into place. We're going to see exactly where we need to cut it, and then obviously we're going to go from 10 pieces to 8, 9, 10, we're going to go to 12 pieces altogether. 12 pieces. So we're going to have to do some measuring, some settings, so we don't want to cut that in the wrong spot. And then you start in the front or the back. That's the way we found works the easiest. And what we did here when we put this one in, we got center and we worked off of that and kind of worked it all the way around from there. So this material here is not as thick as the 1/4 inch material, or 5/16, whatever this stuff was that we put in. So this is going to be a little easier to manipulate. We do have a couple of porta-powers that we're going to use, and we'll push off of the planetary, but we can basically probably just hold this in like that, and I think that's going to work. So let's get some pieces cut, get it laid out a little better here, and we'll start getting this put into place. Sarah wants to get welding, don't you? All right, we've got our first one in. Now we'll go ahead and lay the second one in, and then we'll have to get this piece here in. When we get this piece in, we need to mark that out. So we'll get her something to weld, and then I can be working on getting that marked out. Actually, we set that one in next, and that'll give you 3 pieces to weld. Well, this is going together rather easy. We've got 3 pieces tacked in, and for the most part we're able to push these in by hand, but what we need to do is push the center of those 2 pieces together there now. And I've got older porta-power that is shot, and my father-in-law ended up giving me this one here last night. This is one that he has had for, he's thinking around 40 years. Never really used it. It's a central hydraulics. The ones you get now come in a blow molded case, and once you open those blow molded cases up, you can never figure out how the stuff goes back in there. Now this is only a 4-ton, and it's never been used. So if he's used it, he's only used it once or twice. So we're going to use the porta-power to just push that center those two the center of those pieces together, get that tacked, and then she can go ahead and weld those in completely while I'm jogging around inside here, just cutting pieces and getting the next piece set up. Wonder if it's gonna work. Wonder if Jim and Deanna will be watching the video. They can, yeah. So, yeah, this is a nice box too. All right, here we go. This is going to be the first time that this has been used. Who knows how long? Next time I see him, Joe, I'll thought a little more about when the last time he thought he used this. I actually used it. So we've got, it's working. We've got the rubber end on there, and then we're footed against the planetary. All right, Sarah, so don't burn the rubber end. Put a little tap there and one down there, but don't go to this piece. We'll have to push the front piece back. So, this tool is working rather nicely. I'm going to go ahead and move the box out of the way so we don't have any sparks get down in there. But it's got all of the different attachments. It's a little different than the ones you see today. They are push pin, whatever, but they also have threaded pieces. And I don't know if that's what the Harbor Freight specials are like now anymore or not. With the smaller ones, that is. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm just welding this?
Yeah, don't hit the other, the front one, just the back one. Try to get it to go to just the wall. Going on today?
All right, I'm here with the AMI guy.
All right, yeah, give me a second, I'll be right out. Well, we've got all of the liner pieces in place here. And Sarah's going through and welding it up solid here now. She's welding along the floor, and where she's welding along the floor, she's putting a real thick, heavy bead. She's got that side done, the vertical's done, and she's just going to be working her way around. So someone sent her a beanie, no name, with the package that came. Where'd that come from? Amazon?
Yeah.
And so what do you say to whoever sent that to you?
Thank you very much.
So she's just gonna keep at her here, welding with a little bit of helium here, huh?
Yeah.
You've been getting into, been feeling a little laughy at all with the laughing gas?
No.
No?
Not yet.
Yeah. Well, we'll run on over and check out what Jared's got going on here. But before we do, we'll show you what else we're working on here. If I can climb out of here without killing myself. So when I ordered the liner, I ended up ordering a new conveyor chain. I didn't really need to put the conveyor chain in yet, but this conveyor chain has been out in the elements. What do you think of this conveyor chain? A little rusty, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get her in there just so that we can get it all polished up. If it was painted, we'd just throw it on a pallet, throw it up above, right? Well, get putting it in there.
Get on your end with your end.
And we'll go over and check on Jared. He's got the engine about ready to come out of this 8320. Boys did a service on this truck 12. And like I said, Jared's got this engine ready to come out. He's thinking that the protrusion on the liners is not quite where it needs to be. So he needs to get the engine out because the frame on this tractor is the oil pan, and he's got to pull the pistons out in order to get the liners out. And then shim underneath the liner and get the liners raised just a little bit. Not all of them, but certain ones. Number 6, I think, was the worst out of all of them. However, they are right in within spec. They're just right at that borderline at like 2000s. And they need to be between 2 and 5. So, yeah, we'll help him get this out of here. And then we'll get back working on that mixer wagon. Jared has this here engine rolled over, and he's got the pistons out of it, and now he's gonna lift it up in the upright position and pull the liners out. Well, we started to put the new chain in, and I discovered that the floor in this conveyor is not in the greatest shape. So we have removed the conveyor assembly. I already lined this floor once, so what we're going to have to do now is take the skin that I put on there off so that we can put another one on. I don't dare go over the top of this one just because it's got so much garbage in underneath it. So this is not going to, this job is going to be a little longer than I originally thought. They ended up pulling truck 12 out of this bay next door here, and we had a drive motor go on the defacer. So they're working on getting that changed here now. And we might as well inspect the teeth. That Sarah welded on here, oh, it's been better than a week ago now. And as you can see, they're still on there. So, they've got, that motor there is leaking, this motor's going in. And then we kind of briefly described the drive assembly on this unit here, and we had this apart a week 10 days ago. So it's got a square drive on the motor itself, and then the motor bolts in through this arm here, and then this is what the inside of the defacer looks like that the motor drives from, or drives, the motor drives this part of the defacer drum. So they'll have this back together in a little while here. Jared's working away at getting these liners figured out here. He's got bolts down in there. He's pushed the liner or the sleeves down in, and then he's running a gauge on there to figure out how much protrusion he has or doesn't have. Have you got the liner, the shims?
No idea.
You have no idea? You haven't ordered them yet? Yeah. So, that is what that job is all about. Well, we are moving right along with getting this conveyor sorted out. I ended up removing this top sheet that I put on. I actually put this on, it was like 3 years ago. So it is actually wore a lot more than I thought it would be. And I actually never even looked at it before we went to put the chain in, and I seen as we were pulling the new chain in that we had this hole in there. I said, well, now is the time to do it. I didn't want to just stack another sheet of steel on top of here, so that's why we have removed this. Plus there was enough garbage that had wedged in underneath this sheet here. There would have been a bubble in it and it would have wore out prematurely anyways. So we'll go ahead and step on into the mixer wagon here. We'll check on Sarah. Now, I don't know if I had mentioned it or not, but we're actually using a stainless steel filler wire. We're also using the appropriate gas for welding stainless. Now, being that we're welding stainless to regular steel, you wouldn't necessarily have to use a stainless filler wire. However, I figured it was just better to use the proper wire to do this job, because there is some joints where we're welding stainless to stainless. Now, the gas that we are using is 90% helium, 7.5% argon, and 2.5% carbon dioxide. Now, some of the other mixes that we use when we're welding regular steel, most of the time we're using a 75-25. We're using 75% argon, 25% carbon dioxide. Once in a while, if I'm looking to achieve a real nice weld, I end up using a 90-10 mix, and then we also use sometimes an 85-15% mix as far as the gas goes. So for the most part, most of the welding is done in here. She's got a couple of verticals on that baffle there. Verticals on this baffle. She's got a plate in the back here. And it looks like by about the time I get the conveyor done, she'll have the welding done on the inside of the mixer. We'll go ahead and climb out of here, leave her alone, and we'll run over next door here and see what these guys are working on. They brought in another project, and they're just about ready to roll this one out the door here now. They ended up bringing truck 15 in, and they had a bad torque rod, and they're getting that set up into place here now. The old torque rod, this is the center part here, and I'll show you what every... Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the torque rods that they give you now, at least some of the international ones, they give you a 2-piece one, and what they do is you cut off the length you need, and then you just end up welding it together. So that's what they just got done doing here, and then we'll show you the old torque rod that came out of this. This is the center part of the one end. It's got a couple of rubber bushings that go onto it, and they go from time to time. And that piece that I just threw in the can goes in right here. So we're gonna go ahead and get that cleaned up and get a piece of sheet metal cut and get that on there. Here is where we're at, right at the current moment with this conveyor. We have the old piece removed, and now we've got our new pieces laying in there. Now, the piece of sheet metal that I had was 4 foot by 8 foot, and this is a 10-foot conveyor. So we cut 30, what is this, almost 3 foot wide. We cut a 3 foot wide piece out of that 8 foot piece, and then I had part of a piece of sheet metal left over from the tailgate on this silage body that we built. So we're having to butt weld this piece here on the, which would be the left-hand side. We had the previous one seamed together in the middle because all I had was a 5 foot sheet, 5 foot by whatever, and we had to splice that one. No big deal. It would be ideal if I had a 10-foot piece of sheet metal. Now, we put 12 gauge sheet metal in it last time. It lasted 3 years. We're going to be doing this again in 3 years because that's all the time we can get out of it. Now, I didn't know it, but they actually used a piece of stainless in the floor. And when we put that piece in last time, we weren't wore through. However, right here on the edges where the chain rides, it had wore through there. And probably what I could have done is I could have just put a strip down each side. So I have squished this down with a clamp so that I could get this tight to the floor. I have spot welded it there, and then when we butt weld this piece on, we'll gap it back a little ways so that we can drop a bead down onto the floor to catch the floor as well, so that that doesn't heave up at all. I priced out a new conveyor back when I bought the liners for this mixer wagon, and I can't remember offhand how much it was, but it was quite a bit of money. It was like, I don't even want to quote, I don't even really want to say what it was because I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it was like $7,500 for the whole unit here. New bed chain, the sheet metal that goes on the front, we are wore right through. Here in the center, we're going to have to do something with that. It was wore through, so we're going to have to put some pieces on there to strengthen it up a little bit. And in 3 years, we're going to be doing this again. So we're just going to stitch weld it so that we can remove this top. And had I thought about this ahead of time and knew that they use stainless on here, we could have done the same thing and it would have lasted. It would last longer, but it is what it is. So we better get welding this in place. Then we could slide the conveyor back into the mixer wagon and then put our bed chain on. We're going to replace the sprocket ends. At least the drive end, we have a sprocket on the front side of this conveyor that either has a wore out keyway or the groove in either the sprocket or the shaft is wore out. So we're gonna get to getting after it here. With putting that new chain in, you should have new sprockets anyhow. So, well, we've got this thing all back together. and everybody is in a mad rush to get out of here, so we're gonna make this pretty quick here. We obviously have got the floor in here. We've got the conveyor all back setting in the machine here. Now, like I said, this chain was brand new, but it was shipped either on an open trailer or something. It wasn't painted. We had a mongrel of a time getting it in here. These links were set up, and we're gonna have some trouble getting this to get going. We're not gonna really have trouble, but it's gonna run stiff for a little while, but it's good that we've got it in there and working. So Sarah ended up getting all the welding done in here. Jared did do a little bit in here. There was some tough spots where she was having some trouble on some vertical parts to it. There was the heavy seam right there. She was having trouble right there. Jared got that, and there was another, I want to say there was another spot here somewhere. But we ended up going through one 300 cubic foot bottle of gas, and then a part of another one, and then we went through about half of that roll of wire. So we're gonna see how well this does, and we'll be doing the same thing to the other mixer next year, being that that one is a year behind this one here. So right now we're going to run this conveyor some before we pull it outside, and then we have to go ahead and put the screws in. So what'd you think of the welding there, Sarah?
So much fun.
Ready to do another one? Should we do the red mixer right off? You don't want to do the red mixer right off? What would you rather weld, silage boxes or mixer wagons?
Silent boxes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're gonna get the screws in this, and we're gonna have at it here. Watch it in case the paddle comes off. It's got a couple of kinked up links. You okay? All right, open the front door. That number 2. Okay, run number 3. That number popped out, Jared. Okay, now we'll run out, and we're gonna set the screws in it. Well, we are just getting finished up with putting these screws in. Now we had to time them, and then we also had to cut a little bit off of the kicker plates just because of the inner circumference being closed up a little bit. So we had to cut a little bit off. We rolled it around by hand a couple of times, and now we've got it ready to go, and we'll be feeding cows with her in the morning here. We're gonna actually leave it in the shop overnight, and we'll do a little video here in the morning feeding cows, and we'll get inside it after it's done a load or 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, and we'll investigate what the stainless looks like. But that's gonna polish up nice. Now this conveyor is pretty well shot. We're gonna try to get a little more life out of it. This piece here was on the bottom side, And I'm hoping that we don't run into any issues with the chain dragging, but it would be rubbing on this thing anyways. I don't like the idea of this chain. It's going to get limber again, but man, if anybody left that on a pallet in a parts room somewhere, it would be junk. So we'll catch up with you in the morning once we get feeding cows. Well, we've got one more load of feed to load up for this morning. Everything's working well on this mixer. The floor came out good, and this chain has, the links have loosened up enough to where it is about ready to have the chain tightened up. So we'll jump inside here and give you a peek at what this liner looks like after it's had a few loads of feed run through it. It's all nice and polished up here, and everything has worked quite well naturally. We had to cut, like I was saying here earlier this morning or last night, whenever it was, we did cut the kicker plates down just because the walls, the mixer itself is a little narrower than what it was before, obviously, because we've got these liners in there. So we had to trim the front one down and the back one. Now this plate right here is the original kicker plate, and then we were having a little bit of an issue with a harder startup, so we ended up putting this flat panel on there to kind of give the mixer a little bit of an easier startup, and that has worked rather well. That is 1/2 inch hard ox AR 400 maybe. And we were running a thinner piece of material, which was an AR 200, and it worked quite well. So we finally got around to getting a hardened 1/2 inch one on there, and that'll last. That'll outlast how long the augers are going to last in here. So we figure we've got maybe another year to maybe 1.5 years left on these mixing screws, and we'll have to pull these out and replace them. But we ended up putting these in new 3 years ago when we put the liner kit in here. So I've got one more load of feed to mix up for this morning. I better get to doing that, and then we're gonna go ahead and get that truck box installed after I get done feeding here. So that's gonna do it for this video, folks. I want to thank you for watching, and we will catch you at the next video.